All right, this is our GMC Sierra tweet of the night. According to Pro Football Focus, the Steelers haven't allowed a quarterback grade over 67.5 this season. They have done a very good job, especially in the second half of games, of shutting things down defensively. Chris, before we go to the phone lines, I want to ask you about that happened last night. When the two guys out in right field who I think they've said on record that they patrol the right field area where they sit, not only interfered with Mookie Betts, they nearly ripped his arm off, pried the ball away. The call was made out. It's a correct call. But they were originally said they were going to be able to be at this game tonight. But as the day wore on, they were banned from going. But they did get a refund, which I didn't understand, a refund for not being there. If anything, they owe them more money. They owe the team more money, and they should never be allowed back in that stadium based on what they did last night. What's your take on this?
So my understanding is they might have gotten a refund, but the Yankees also did a smart thing and a good thing and gave, I think, the seats to a pediatric cancer patient and that cancer patient's family, so they did make some good out of it. As for these two complete, I would call them, tri-state area Jags up there, the Connecticut, New Jersey, New York area. They're the equivalent of like bad Jag-offs. I would say ban them from every major league ballpark, mainly for being huge losers who would unironically say something like the one guy saying, I patrol this wall. Get out of here, you moron. I mean, just complete garbage, Bush League stuff. I really have no problem, in all seriousness, with if those guys had put their hands up a la Steve Bartman trying to catch that ball. Right. And, in that sense, you are trying to offer a home field advantage because if the ball hits your hands and you didn't stretch your hands out over the field to play, hey, Mookie Betts, sorry, man, you were reaching into foul territory, their ball as much as yours. The Steve Bartman play, basically. But to go, oh, no, I'm going to pry his glove open and look, and then you see all those guys on the video and they're all pointing, going, yeah, we got him. Throw every one of those guys out of every ballpark for the rest of their lives, because I can pretty much guarantee you what kind of person you're dealing with. In this case, it was a guy who's almost my age who thinks he's 22 years old and everything he does is the funniest, coolest thing ever. I have a very simple word for a person like that. They are a loser and will never be anything but a loser.
And it makes the Bartman play, but Steve Bartman didn't do anything wrong. He was just there.
He got his life ruined for this, and this guy's probably going to have a Barstool podcast for this.
Moises Alou got up and it was against his own team, and that all hurt and everything else. But man, 20 years of his life was ruined because of the way people treated him. But this is far worse than that. All right, get to the lines. We have a lot of people want to talk. 412-575-2600. Let's begin with Dave in Export, Pennsylvania. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Hey, Bob, how are you?
Good, thanks.
I got a little quick question about the Pens. Can either one of you guys tell me why they keep Erik Karlsson and Ryan Graves? I cannot stand watching them play. They have a lot of money. I figured there was something with money with Karlsson, but I mean, my goodness, I couldn't stand
money with Graves, too, Dave. They gave Graves a terrible deal. Tyler Kennedy said, Bob, on the air with me today, that he thinks Mike Sullivan needs to bench a couple guys to get the message through, and he named Karlsson specifically. What say you?
Oh, I would do that. I would have done that with Letang at points last year just to make a statement. Malkin, when he does his Malkin stuff, he's a very gifted player, but when he's not engaged, he takes bad offensive zone penalties. Sometimes you got to do it. And I know he respects those guys. He has ridden those guys' coattails largely to 2 Stanley Cups for himself. But, man, at some point you have to make a statement here. And not only that, Chris, I would shake up this power play. I would make messages that, no. It's not just going to be Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Karlsson, and Raquel, or whomever else they want to stick up there. We're going to really radically change this. Not unlike who was the manager of baseball who said, I'm going to pick my lineup from a hat tonight. You're batting first, okay? This guy's batting. I would do something to make a statement here, because otherwise, if you keep trotting out the same thing, and the power play looks to me the same. It's a lot of perimeter play, not much else going on. Now, they got a goal last night by Puustinen, but he's not really on the regular power play.
I mean, you said it right there, though, in your lead-up, Bob. He respects them, Sullivan does, too much. And this is what happens when players have so much power in terms of how their contracts got written up, no movement clauses. This is what happens when the organization's DNA, since really Lemieux, has been to cater to the star player, and specifically the offensively gifted star player. This is on like the path of a star, of a celestial body. This is where the star starts to collapse in on itself, right? And then it eventually just kind of explodes and it's gone. Well, that's what these guys are going to be, gone in a couple of years. So I just think you're going to get more of the same. I think you and I could be talking about this in early January, Bob, and the frustrations are going to be the exact same. The record's going to be putrid. And maybe the only reason we won't actually be talking about this in January is because everyone will have long relegated the Penguins to the dustbin of things we don't care about in Pittsburgh sports.
You know, and last night they had a sellout crowd, or the biggest crowd of the year, and it was largely because of Marc-Andre Fleury. But that in the night where 1,600 and 500 milestones were achieved on that same night. Other than that, I wonder what kind of crowds they're going to have here moving forward, just because it's been difficult for them to sell out. Earlier this year, they had, I think, 4,000 empty seats at one of those games, and it used to be a tradition, unlike any other, to sell out just about every game for how many years they did it. And now that's the first indication that it's going to be difficult, given prices and everything else, to keep having people come out to watch games.
You know as well as I do, in 2002 and 2003, you could be on the glass for $20 basically at the old arena. And so I really wonder if the people that run that organization from a business perspective have a sense of the gravity as to what is to come if they don't somehow turn themselves back into a contender and get another young superstar level player. I think there's a little bit of hubris in that organization. Hey, we've been riding high for 4 decades. We're not going to get knocked off this perch. They will find out very quickly that that is a misguided assessment of their situation.
Let's go out to Rick in Hempfield, who joins us right now on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Hey, Rick.
Hey, Bob and Chris. Hey, you guys just stole a lot of my thunder. If they fire Sullivan, they're not going to listen to some new guy either. It's not going to get any better. It's easier to fire the coach than it is to fire the players, which is what they really do need to do. Sullivan would get swept up by some other organization and probably win another cup.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that, but I think this also falls on Kyle Dubas, and before him, let's be clear here. Ron Hextall has his fingerprints all over this team with some of the moves, but you know,
so
Dubas,
does Rutherford.
Yeah, no question about that.
Honestly, with trading all the picks, but at least Rutherford won cups. But then it's been a series of mismanaged moves. Dubas hasn't used the money wisely. The Jari contract is a total albatross that they didn't have to do. I think, though, if you're going to blame Dubas, you have to blame Sullivan, at least in part, because we know he had an outsized amount of say in how they made personnel decisions. We know he had influence as far as Jari. Jari was still his guy. I mean, they've just backed the wrong horses. They've brought in the wrong players. You know, you mentioned earlier, Bob, that they had they were trying to win still with this group, bringing in veterans on like short-term deals, 1-year contracts. I'm not so sure that might not have been their way to say, we're actually pretty much tanking here, and we hope these guys play well, but we're not good enough to contend, and so we can swap them at the deadline for picks. I actually think that might have been Kyle Dubas' real plan here. Problem, if the team is as bad as they look right now, none of those guys are going to be worth anything at the trade deadline.
No, they're not getting much production at all, and they have last night they moved Beauvillier down to the 4th line. You know, Kevin Hayes, all due respect, he's just not fast. He hasn't been fast when he was young. Now he's slower than he was. So they do have a lot of problems there. Let's go to Jim in Latrobe. Jim joins us here on the hotline. Hey, Jim.
Hey, guys. Hey, I agree with a lot of what Chris was saying, you know, about Sullivan. And I was just wondering if you guys know if there's an upcoming star for the #1 pick coming up next year.
No, first of all, from what I can see, they're no generational type players. They're good players, but I mean, even if they are there, whoever they may take, if it's not a generational player, somebody's going to take 3 or 4. Look how many guys they've drafted, Chris, we haven't even seen, and guys they've given up on who were drafted as #1 picks. So it's hard to get #1 picks in the NHL unless you get one of those guys like a McDavid, like a Bedard, or any of these guys. It's hard to do it.
The Penguins not only got Lemieux, not only got Jágr in the top 5 of a draft, both of whom were the best player in the NHL for a significant chunk of time. Then they have in back-to-back years with the 2nd overall pick and the 1st overall pick. Crosby is a top 5 player ever. Malkin's probably a top 25 to 30 player at absolute worst of all time in back-to-back drafts. So if you're a top 30 player of all time, you're pretty much a generational player or close to it. They had a pair of them to build this team around. Like, I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer. The good times were absolutely great. I was a half-season ticket holder. It was awesome going to those games during the back-to-back cup run here in 15-16 and 16-17, Bob. But their luck is going to run out. And, like, rebuilds don't always work. And they have had the golden goose for so long. Most of their fans don't even know what it's like to live as a bottom-tier franchise in the NHL standings. And they are likely to find out, and very soon.
Just like the Kings, just like the Blackhawks, just like Detroit, which had that 25-year run. I mean, it's just very difficult to maintain. We're going to take a break, come back with more. This is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. We're live on KDKA Plus and 93.7 The Fan. Back to the lines. Tom in Pittsburgh. Go right ahead, Tom.
Hey, how you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Just a quick question. Now, this has been going on for a long time. And I know Crosby is the face of the Penguins. It has been since Lemieux left. Why couldn't we have traded Letang, maybe Malkin back in the day, a couple years ago?
We
got
could have.
rid of them, picked up some draft picks or something. Now, I know, like you guys were talking about, we didn't have the best GMs in Rutherford.
That's a decision, though.
Rutherford
That's a decision that's made at the ownership level, and they,
Right.
as an organization, wanted to keep the core together. That's what they.
But
the
I would
bottom
have
line
traded.
is,
I
in
would
one
have done
sentence.
that. I would have traded one, if not both, just because the way it goes. Unfortunately, you mentioned something that has caught the sports landscape by storm. It's no movement clauses, and when you give those away, you make it more difficult. And the guy has to be a willing participant in many cases, Chris. And I don't like those things. And they gave away a lot of that stuff.
Well, I think they gave it away willingly because they wanted to keep these guys together. And so that's just a way to say, hey, we have faith in this. We want it to work. The bottom line in one sentence is when the Penguins could have done a very kind of hard decision thing after 2018 when they finally lost in the playoffs and tried to retool it by trading guys, they didn't. They said, what matters to us as an organization is keeping these big three together and come hell or high water trying to ride that out into the sunset. And now you are seeing the horse is breaking down here, Bob. It's got laminitis. They're not riding off into the sunset.
Well,
this is getting very ugly. It's like the end of Blazing Saddles. They're crashing into Hollywood sets here.
Like we said, eventually it happens to all teams who try to do this, and we've seen it throughout the league. They've had a great run here, and I'll never forget that run. It should be celebrated, but all things come to an end, and maybe we're seeing the beginning of it. Chris, thanks very much. We'll do it again tomorrow night right here, same time, same channel. Thank you for joining us on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. See you at 11 o'clock on KDKA News.